What's up NBA fans, Dom2K on the mic, and before the video starts real quick, I just wanted to recommend that you stick around until the end of the video if you're a long-time subscriber because I do have a special announcement you might be interested in. The Clippers are garbage. Well, at least that's how they've been looked at as a franchise in general. There's a good chance that for most of your life, they've sucked. They've always just kind of been that team that exists out there in the ether, one of 30 NBA franchises that just goes through the motions every year with no real goal in mind. The team that most of the time you might even be able to see when they come to town because the tickets are so cheap. As a matter of fact, the only time that they haven't sucked for an extended period of time was the Lob City era, and even most of the positives about that phase are drowned out by the disappointment of unreached potential. But what if today was the day that you learned that a curse wasn't even their biggest problem? They aren't just unfortunate, the basketball gods don't hate them, well, as much as we think they do anyways. But no, there's actually a concrete, provable reason behind why their franchise has a whopping 13 playoff appearances in nearly 50 seasons. Meet Elgin Baylor, who is not the reason this team has always been terrible, but he is the scapegoat. Meet the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek is the amazing app that provides you with the easiest way to buy tickets for almost any kind of event, which would most likely be sports related for you all. The app pulls tickets from all over the web and has them in one place to make purchasing one for your event really easy, and it also assures you'll be getting the best value for your ticket. While searching for your tickets, each one is ranked with a score from 1 to 100 that lets you know if you're getting a good deal or not for your purchase. On top of that, the app also provides you with the detailed view of what you would see from your seat before you even get there, which is extremely helpful. If you're interested in downloading this app, the links will be in both the comment section and highlighted in the description. If you're still on the fence, consider using my promo code DOM2K to get $20 off your first purchase. No, more like relive Donald Sterling, one of the most vile looking human beings to ever walk God's green earth. Really fitting that we're doing this in October. Before you knew him for infamously not wanting any black people at his games, he was behind the scenes setting in motion the events that would lead the Clippers to a seemingly eternal life of struggle. However, he was doing it behind the mask of his general manager Elgin Baylor, so when you take a look around even now, people generally say Baylor was a great player but a terrible GM, that the Clippers never made good draft picks or good signings, and that it was all his fault. I'm sorry, but you've been sold a myth. Recall the video about Kobe Bryant's dad where we established that the official end to his career came when he was traded to the San Diego Clippers, and because the new owner had no interest in winning, his career faded to black on a team that had no direction. That new owner was none other than Donald Sterling, and Elgin Baylor joined his front office about 5 years later in 1986, which means all the failure that occurred under his watch for 22 years was solely blamed on him. But here's the story behind what went into making all that failure possible. In those grueling 22 years under the command of Elgin Baylor, they made the playoffs 4 times. They only managed a record above 30 wins 11 times. The best player over that entire stretch? Debatable, but probably Elton Brand, which explains why you've never even bothered with their all-time team on 2K. Well, let's start with the fact that Sterling was the Julius of NBA teams. As mentioned before, when Kobe's dad got there, they were dumping good players because they didn't want to pay them. Sterling never had any intentions of paying players what they were worth, which is why you've never heard any serious reports about a big-time free agent truly wanting to go there until now where he's no longer the owner. A great case in point for this being star prospect Danny Manning, who is also one of the best players the Clippers ever had. Made the All-Star team a couple of times, a good scorer and rebounder, and a good overall piece to draft for a struggling team. Baylor saw that potential and took him with the first pick in the '89 draft. But then when it came time to sign him, Sterling continued his practice of lowballing players in contract offers, but that wasn't even the worst thing that happened here. Manning's agent tossed out a number to get negotiations started. Sterling countered with a disrespectfully low offer, and when his agent declined, Sterling retorted, quote, "That's a lot of money for a poor black kid." The Clippers did end up signing Manning, but when Sterling said that to him, he got up and walked out for obvious reasons. It's probably already starting to make sense why the Clippers have seemed cursed all this time. Manning was eventually traded, and that set a shocking precedent, or a cheap one, where the Clippers never kept any of their high draft picks long term. From 1985 to 1998, the Clippers picked in the lottery 9 times. Those lottery players re-signed with the Clippers after their first contract a total of 0 times. Most of the picks didn't become stars or anything, but a lot became decent players that could have been part of a good team if Sterling cared to pay them. For the few good players they did have, when it came time to discuss their contracts, Sterling would find some reason to complain about the player and justify why they weren't worth a certain amount of money. Again, hence why nobody has ever bothered to sign there through free agency. That reputation precedes very easily. And if that weren't enough, there are some credible and compelling allegations that he urged the Clippers' own stat keepers to be conservative with their assists. In other words, there was a stretch of time where Clippers players' assist totals were being underreported so that their averages weren't calculated correctly, and therefore he could justify not really paying them. The evidence? Back in 2009, a scorekeeper came forward and stated that this was the case. On top of that, between 1987 and 2009, home teams assisted on 61.8% of their field goals, meanwhile their away percentage was 58.3%. So that's only about a 3% difference in how they're reported between being home and away. However, in 1996, it was reported that the Clippers assisted on only 47% of their field goals at home, but on the road with different scorekeepers, that exact same team assisted on 60% of their field goals. That 13% difference is a whole 10% higher than the average difference during that time. Is that a coincidence? Did the team just flip a switch and pass better in different arenas? Was the lighting better? Or was Donald Sterling plotting against his own roster so that he could justify paying them less? In 1983, there was a point in the season where the Clippers were down to just 8 players. That's the minimum number of active players a roster can have going into a game. But to save money, Donald never advised the team to sign extra bodies. Instead, they sent out just 8 guys, and one of the players even suited up despite having recent surgery on his jaw. Remember Ron Harper? Of course you do. But I bet you didn't realize he was averaging nearly 25-5 right before he signed with the Bulls and took a lesser role. By those numbers, he'd proven that he could be a valuable piece of any team. But instead of acknowledging this, the Clippers offered him $16 million over 5 years, while the Bulls offered him $20 million for that same amount of time. Rather than bothering to match that, the Sterling camp told him to quote, "have fun," and so he did, as he helped Chicago to 3 more titles. The year before that dispute, the Clippers paid him $4 million for 1 season. That was the highest salary they paid any player until 2001, when league rules mandated that they pay a top draft pick a certain amount. Oh, but don't worry, it gets cheaper. To try and avoid paying the cost of a trainer, when Sterling first became the owner, he requested that coach Paul Silas tape the players himself. Trainers are an absolute necessity for a professional team to function at a professional level, and one of his first moves as owner was to try and pass that responsibility off to a coach. Why would any star player want to play for an organization that barely wants to pay basic costs, yet alone the players? It wasn't hard for this information to get around in NBA circles, and not only did it keep top free agents from ever looking in their direction, but it even pushed college prospects away. During Baylor's time as GM, he reported that there were several college coaches and players that called specifically to tell him not to even bother looking their way in the draft, as they would simply refuse to play for the Clippers. That's one for all the people that blame Baylor for all those poor picks. Sterling's damage went beyond just players, by the way. They couldn't even do a proper search for a coach because of him. Through Baylor's friendship with accomplished Georgetown coach John Thompson, they at least got him in for a meeting. Sterling started that meeting by rambling about random topics, then abruptly asked Thompson, "So tell me, what have you done?" There are so many things wrong with that style of interview, especially for an accomplished coach. Thompson stormed out after going off on him, but that meeting was doomed from the beginning for one reason: Thompson was black. I'm not referring to Sterling's general dislike of black people that he admitted to on tape though. He actually told Baylor that he wanted a white coach for black players, saying, quote, "I prefer white coaches. Black players are more intimidated by a white coach." Did Baylor just make that up to save face? Judge for yourself.
He said that you wanted all black players and a southern white coach.
Eldon Baylor said that I never said anything racial to him.
That's correct.
Okay.
He did say that, but
I
he
loved
also...
the man. I respected the man. He worked for me for 23 years. Why didn't he say something in 23 years if he wasn't happy?
So when he says that you had said you wanted all black players and a southern white coach, is that true?
Is that logical? Is it logical? You get a white coach? I have a black coach and an African-American coach. I want the best of the best of the best. Every owner wants that. We have good owners in this league. I'm just telling you, they are the best.
A majority of the coaches during Sterling's time as owner were in fact white, which isn't the problem itself. The problem being more so that Baylor was restricted from finding the best man for the job, since Sterling's plantation mentality limited who he would actually accept. And finally, one of the creepiest parts of the Sterling era, and one that would clearly keep any sane superstar away from the team, is that Baylor claimed he used to see Sterling bring both girls and guys into the locker room while the players were changing. Allegedly, he would say, quote, "Look at those beautiful black bodies." What? Is the movie Get Out starting to ring a bell? By the way, if that does sound too crazy for you to believe, this story was corroborated by Darius Miles in his Players Tribune piece. Him and Quentin Richardson played for the Clippers, and they both told this same exact story. They said that he would bring people into the locker room and he would talk about, look at their bodies, look how beautiful they are, basically like he was on a slave plantation. But let's see what Sterling himself has to say about that.
They say that you have a plantation mentality.
Okay.
And you would bring women into the locker room and point out black players and say, look at their beautiful black bodies.
Well, I don't think anybody's body is any more beautiful than anybody else.
So you wouldn't do that?
I would bring some, maybe if we won a game and there was some relative of one of the players, I would let them go in after they had dressed. Yes.
So yeah, there's enough evidence to say that that was definitely a fetish of his, and you can be weird and twist that into a compliment if you want, but there's no way to argue that that wasn't super uncomfortable for Clippers players. And so what about Elgin? He's this pristine player from the 60s and widely regarded as one of the pioneers of the game. Why did he choose to work under these conditions for 22 years despite Sterling handcuffing his abilities, creating a hostile work environment, and clearly bordering on racism a lot of the time? Two reasons. Elgin cites his competitiveness and how badly he wanted to be successful despite the conditions he was given, and then there was everyone shaming him as the GM of the league's worst franchise. The second part being that because everyone perceived him to be a terrible GM, he didn't feel that he'd ever be able to get a job anywhere else. And seeing as people still believe the Clippers fiasco was all his fault, he's probably right. So the Clippers curse has officially been debunked. Well, kind of. I mean, the parts where Livingston almost had to have his leg amputated, Blake Griffin got injured as soon as he was drafted, and how an injury pretty much always kept him from going far in the playoffs, yeah, I mean, those were all just shit luck. But that ignores all the damage Donald Sterling did to the franchise by being a cheap racist, and it's pretty easy to deduce that NBA circles knew all that information well before the rest of us, which is why their franchise has never had any success to build off of. Luckily, the past doesn't speak for the present or the future. Steve Ballmer took over the franchise once Adam Silver dropped a hammer on Donald, and Jerry West joined the front office in 2017. All of a sudden, they're due to have a ton of cap space this summer, and they've popped up more than once as a destination star players would actually consider. The first step to their future success was ridding themselves of the toxic waste that plagued that franchise for a little over 30 years. They've still got a ways to go, but if the injury bug ever leaves them alone and some of the future plans actually do work out, the Clippers might go from being the NBA's longest running joke to clamping your favorite team on the way to the conference finals. So now that we've reached the end, time for the special announcement. If you're a long-time subscriber, this will make more sense to you because you've been around for me to talk about the Hardwood Amino app, and many of you went and downloaded it and followed me on there. But now I've partnered with them to create my own Amino, which is a fan club that you guys can join for exclusive content. By becoming a member, you'll get access to content that I'm simply not going to share anywhere else. So you'll be a part of live chats with me during games because I'm watching at least one game every night. You'll know what videos I'm doing for both channels ahead of time because I'll be sharing previews in that club with you all. I'll be sharing different opinions that I have about the NBA and basketball in general, and I'll be giving you guys feedback on your own blogs because this is also your community too, meaning you can contribute in any way that you see fit. So there'll be much more. Those are just some of the perks that you get by joining the fan club. And you also have some options here, so if you just want to follow my Amino and see other things that I post and other things that members post, then you're more than free to do that. But if you want to actually join the fan club and get exclusive content and get in on the live chats, then you'll need coins to join that part. So you can either earn the coins organically by using the app or watching videos within the app, or you can just buy the coins if you don't feel like doing that. But if you choose to subscribe to this, it does support me as a creator, so it's a great way to interact with me and support me at the same time. So if you're interested, the link will be in both the comment section and in the description, and I hope to see you all there because it's going to be a ton of fun. Alright, so that'll be all for today. Make sure to subscribe to my second channel, which is my gaming channel if you haven't, because we're having a lot of fun over there. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.